He's a much more likable person, I think, in this specific production of Thrill Me, because Richard is driven by the thrill, that je ne sais quoi, the thing that both of them, the mystery that was both of them, like why did they do it? My job's a little bit easier because Nathan needs Richard like lungs need air. Yeah, he absolutely cannot live without him, and I think at the beginning of the play, he talks about in the parole board, At the beginning of the play, he talks in the parole board how he would always play this game where Richard would leave without saying a word, and finally, at the beginning of the play, Nathan decides he's back in Chicago, I'm never going to lose him again. And then the play happens from there, and I don't think at that moment Nathan knows exactly how willing he is, how far he is willing to go. I'll start over. At the beginning of the play, I don't think Nathan realizes how far he's willing to go to stay with Richard, but he ends up going quite far historically, and they do some terrible things together. But it's hard to really justify. But it quite literally, in his mind, he doesn't know how his conscience works. He just knows that I need this person more than anything in the world. The true-to-life story, it was known as the crime of the century. It was these 19-year-old boys who were pretty much set for life. Leopold and Loeb, they were both huge, influential Chicago families. Both of them were going to law school. My character, Nathan, has been accepted to Harvard. They had their whole life ahead of them. I think Richard had an inheritance of $1 million back in 1920 money. But yeah, it's sort of hard to justify why they did what they did. And what they ended up doing, of course, for those who don't know, is they ended up abducting a 12-year-old boy, undressing him, pouring acid on his face, and doing terrible things to him, and ultimately killing him, leaving him in a culvert pipe. And they lied and lied about it, but they were caught within hours. And I mean, with the little boy in his trunk, they were having hot dogs and ice cream before they dropped him off. Like, the entire world, when they found this out, couldn't come to terms. They're like, is this psychopathy? Are they sociopaths? Like, psychology was just in its infancy back then, so they really didn't know how to come to terms with this. And as we know, historically, Clarence Darrow ended up defending them because of their influential families, and they ended up not getting the death sentence, which all of early America went, excuse me, and they ended up getting life plus 99 years. Or I believe they did. That's how it goes in the play. So the difference between that real-life historical account and the play is mostly Nathan's character, my character, which I'm excited to kind of come to terms with, because it's a whole lot more likable to understand Nathan's character, because he does not want to go along with this. He does not want to commit the crimes that Richard wants to commit. He does not want to do this to this boy. But he has no choice, because he will not lose Richard again. He will not. He's not. He was famously in prison in the real-life historical account. When Richard was killed, he never had sex with another man, whereas Richard went on to have homosexual relationships. So it's not so much that he was a sexual deviant or a homosexual or heterosexual. He was a Richard sexual. He could not live without this person. So I think that's a whole lot more. I sleep a lot better at night knowing that that is the job that I have to do on this stage than the thing that Richard has to go through every night. I had the privilege of doing this show and this same character about 8 years ago. During that production, our takeaway, so to speak, our meaning for doing was a whole lot different than what we're doing here today. And what's really exciting about that is it's hard to justify when you showcase bad people. It's hard to justify exactly why are you doing this. Is it for the true crime audience, people that want to tickle that macabre part of their brain? But at the end of the day, theater is human. You to empathize and to synchronize your heart with the audience around you, and you all have to truly come to terms with the fact, oh, this person did this, and that's why. They're not just a monster, they're not inhuman. They did this, it was the worst decision they could have made, but I understand. So I think in the most where the power that theater has is it forces you to be in the room with these terrible people, and what starts as a fascination and fear ends up as a sad understanding. There are Steve quite a script with this, and while the subject matter is what it is, there is something that draws an actor or a person to this kind of material. You, as an actor, as a psychologist of the human condition in action, you really kind of stay up at night being like, no, wait, is that why they did what they did? And in the past 8 years, between these portrayals, I have asked myself that same question. Every couple of weeks I've wondered about the worst characters I had to portray. Like, oh wait, is that it? I think it's the same thing we're seeing now. The things like the on one bad day and what that could do to any of us, because these kids who had their entire lives ahead of them made this decision, and everyone in the world went, why? And that's a song in the show. That's a crux of the plot. It's why we all seek to understand each other as brothers and sisters. And that's that. That's the good feeling thing. The other thing that is just absolutely this character is there are quite a few dramatic turns that are just candy. And anyone who comes and experiences the show, I won't spoil you, but it will absolutely just knock you out of the park. There's nothing like having an audience go, oh God.